So I have pedestrians having the right of way. The size of the garage is 992 spaces. That is not all worker spaces. You know, I think it's 30,000 feet, or is 30,000 feet is retail. So, you know, 3 per 1,000, about 190 of those spaces are for retail also, which has a different kind of traffic characteristic. So if that's the number of employees, there may be, close to Ms. Riley's account, the number of employees that might be headquartered here at one of these tenants. But given the amount of parking and given the kind of buildings these are, the types of tenants that are going to select these buildings are tenants like Deloitte, who aren't all working and coming to the building at once. They are headquarters for North Jersey and are going to, or New Jersey as a whole in this case, and are going to all these different client locations, and they're sort of staged there as auditors or whatever the case is. So that they've told us, Deloitte specifically, that was the question. At any given time, about 400 employees are going to be at that facility.
400.
So that's the questions I can answer, Brian, if you want to speak to the pedestrians and how they get the right of way in a roundabout scenario.
So one point of clarification, I'm a traffic engineer.
Not a planner.
Come on. Sorry.
Show them some respect.
But you know, the comment was correct. You know, the right of way in the state of New Jersey, in any state for that matter, is the pedestrian. In the state of New Jersey, you must stop for a pedestrian crosswalk. So there's additional enhancements that we're looking at doing. One is the lights, 2 are the crosswalks, 3 is the splitter islands. So then there's all the other stuff that we may look at the planning board to see what makes sense in terms of the raised crosswalks that we talked about before.
That's a little louder.
Sorry, introducing the hawk signals, all those additional enhancements that we could look at to make the experience for pedestrians better. We're going to do that at the planning board level. We're also going to see what are the impacts to the flow if we do introduce some of those. So if we introduce the hawk, is it going to significantly impact the operation on the ground? Another comment that I wanted to just touch on is in terms of the vehicles going through the roundabout, the types of vehicles. We had an extensive conversation and dialogue back and forth with the applicant's traffic engineer. My son's 4 months, so it's been at least 6 months that we've been talking to them and making sure that this design at this point, the concept, not that it's fully engineered, but the layout is conducive for all the types of vehicles that you may see. Large tractor trailers, transit vehicles through here, beer and delivery type vehicles, motorcycles, passenger cars. We looked at all that and we feel comfortable that this is feasible, given this footprint, the ability for those vehicles to circulate through the roundabout. That's all been taken into consideration in terms of this design at this point.
I think so.
Oh, you need to Ian. And then you're next with the sheets.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindsey Halloran. I live at 8 Flagler Street, Apartment 1 in Morristown, New Jersey. I have a couple questions and some statements. One, I do say it is a beautiful thing. This looks very beautiful. Are these apartments or is this a business that you're going to be putting in this place? Offices. So that means, Philip, so there's going to be 900 additional parking spaces. Is that what you're saying? So that means 900 additional cars, because if these people were really taking trains back and forth to work, you wouldn't need a parking garage that large, would you?
That's okay.
He'll answer that question.
I know at the end. Also, I would like to remind everybody on this council, this is not Hoboken, as the planner has said. This is Morristown. We are a town. We are a town. And roundabouts are very dangerous. I'm sorry. Like one woman commented, being in England, my family's from Scotland, and I've seen roundabouts, and they can get traffic jams, they can be dangerous. Pedestrians do, they just walk out into the street. And here's another concern, is this being built to separate us second ward from the rest of the town? Because not only does the second ward rely on this shopping center, but other people that live in Morristown do. And you're gonna be taking jobs away from people. Lots of jobs. And there's nothing really around in Morristown that's 24 hours. If my son's blood sugar drops at 2 o'clock in the morning and I don't have a car, what's within walking distance? Nothing, nothing. I think that this is something that is, I just see it being a bad thing. I really, really do. And I don't normally come to these things, and I'm very sorry. I came unprepared. I found out about this 2 days ago, and I did all my research that I could find online. And from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like if these were big buildings with low-income housing or something like that, I'd be all for it. But it's offices, it's business offices. And what if we put this in and it doesn't work? It isn't like we can just rebuild the roads overnight. Like, this is something that shouldn't be taken wholeheartedly. And when you say, yeah, they'll take it to Florham Park, let them take it to Florham Park. This is Morristown, this is my town, this is everybody's town. And I'm sorry, no disrespect, but I would love a planner to plan this that lived here and grew up here, like the rest of us. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, I grew up here too, and I just don't live here right now because my wife maybe lives somewhere else.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
I care very much. I lived here since I was 9 years old, and I remember Morristown the way it used to be. And I'm happy the way that it is now. And I think that this is part of that progression. I think Morristown is safer. I was thinking this morning as I was coming here today about incidents that I experienced when I was 14 years old, getting surrounded by people, heckled for money in Headquarters Plaza, and the police getting involved. That doesn't happen anymore.
That's because of the.
You can't speak from the public.
What does
Alright.
that
I'm just
even
saying.
mean? What does that even mean?
I'm just saying
Excuse me,
that
can we have respect for all of the speakers here? You all in the public will have an opportunity to come
So,
before us.
I'm going to answer the actual planning question.
If you
if that's
answer
okay.
it.
Yep. So, the question was, 992 parking spaces, why are we building parking if everybody's going to be taking the train? And the fact is that the developer needs to take a conservative approach in order to be able to market these buildings to world-class office tenants. These office tenants, and I've learned a lot by through this process and by hearing from brokers, by hearing from other developers about the way that office tenants are very conservative about the travel patterns of their employees. They want their employees to show up to work however their employees want to get to work. So we all hope, and we have standards in the plan, in the redevelopment plan, to do everything possible to encourage them to take alternative forms of transportation, including subsidizing rail passes, including other forms of transportation. These are obligations that have to happen and will be audited. The efficacy of the transportation demand management will be audited on an ongoing basis to make sure that there's not more that needs to be done in order to get alternative forms of transportation being used, which is one of the requirements of LEED, by the way, transportation demand management. So these office tenants want the parking. They might not need it, they don't care, they want it, and they're not going to move and they're not going to release these buildings if they don't have the parking here. So that's why there's so many parking spaces. There was a discussion about job dislocation. The fact is that the amount of retail jobs, we have basically the same amount of retail space going back in, give or take I think like 5,000 or 7,000 feet. So
It's 2,000.
or 2,000 feet. So the amount of jobs, the way that we think about occupancy is based on square feet. And it's the same types of operations that are there. Not only that, and I wish you were here at the prior hearings, but we talked a lot about the reasons why having good corporate citizens in a community helps lift up and helps future generations through mentorship programs, through supporting nonprofits, through all the soft things that people don't get always to see when you have office and responsible corporate citizens in your town. So that's something that goes well beyond the social benefits and economic benefits of replacing the amount of jobs that the retail, because we're doing basically a one-for-one replacement on the retail. So, and that's it. And I did, again, in prior discussions, talk about the second ward and talk about the question was, why are we cutting this off? Why are we cutting the neighborhoods off? My position on this is that these infrastructure improvements, creating a beautiful promenade, creating real connected sidewalks, rebuilding a lot of this pedestrian infrastructure. Right now, you have pedestrian passage widths less than 2 feet on Morris Street. I've watched people traverse with their baby carriages over tree roots between a parking lot and a iron fence and the sidewalk and the moving cars. That won't happen anymore because we're going to create a real pedestrian connection, a viable pedestrian connection from down Spring Street, MLK, all the way to the train station with this project. So I would say that this provides a much stronger pedestrian connection than what currently exists today. That's all I have.
Thank you, Phil. You got your hand up? Yeah, wait, sure.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Phil, do you want to talk about the office space? Because she made a comment about office space versus apartments, and we need first-class office space. That was one of at the first hearing, that was one of the biggest things that screamed out, was that companies have left town because they don't have first-class office space that this will provide. So,
And companies.
we have an abundance of residential apartments and rental units and townhouse communities, and especially in the core. So do you want to just comment on that? Because I think we should clarify that there's a need for good office space that this project provides. That's another benefit.
Absolutely, and I think it does provide balance. We've built several apartments. I think if this was an apartment project, all we'd be hearing is how many more apartments would be built in this town. This makes good on the investment and the choices that you've made in the past. Some of the reasons why these corporate tenants want to be here is because their workforce wants to live here, wants to live in the housing that you've built and improved. So this creates a balance. And what I'll call like a cycle of success in communities where you improve housing, the housing attracts high-skilled labor force. High-skilled labor force attracts more employers creates supports the housing market. So I think that this is good planning. I think that the policies that you've set forth over the last 10 years are working here. And yes, you can't find good blocks of office space that are consistent with the way that today's innovative companies want to work, with big floor plates, with the mechanical systems, with the electrical service that they need to run themselves, with be able to lay out the offices in the neighborhoods that they want to lay themselves out in. So, Headquarters Plaza was that for a moment, and Headquarters Plaza had AT&T. And that was a big block of office that was built really for them. And then they left, and then it got cut up into a bunch of smaller businesses, save for record dancing. But otherwise, it's a lot of small spaces, and if one of these larger companies want to come here, they can't. No, but they could with this project.
Thank you. Okay, you're up, sorry.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, my name is Steven Zaklukiewicz. I live at
How do you spell the last name?
ZAKLUKIEWICZ. They used to call me iChart in college. 20 Condick Place in Morristown. First of all, thank you very much for giving us all the opportunity to listen to the presentations. I know there's been a lot of public interest, but one thing I want to draw to your attention, your website today on its calendar didn't have this meeting. It had a meeting for the famished frog liquor,
That was before this.
yeah, no, from 2018.
That's because this meeting was rescheduled.
So, but anyway, my point is your calendar didn't have.
That's because this was postponed.
It was.
It was.
It was.
Was up.
It's been up and it was up.
Been up,
I just asked you to check it
on the
out.
website.
Okay.
So that's not true. It's on the website.
I take exception to that. It is true. I saw it 5 minutes before I came
My
to the
clerk,
meeting.
my clerk and the business administrator say it's on the website.
Difference of opinion.
All right, well, I mean, you only have 5 minutes, so I don't know if you wanna go back and
It's
forth.
fine. I don't care how long.
Just
I
check.
have.
It's on the website.
I'm thankful for any time to speak to you
Okay,
guys.
just check, it's on the website.
I just wanted to ask Brian, is it? The traffic analysis, the board approved, the council approved a new development on the north side of the train station recently. As you know, the Menon site on Hanover and MLK is ongoing. Over 100 townhouses to be built, and now this project is planned on Morris Street. Have you taken into account all the vehicles that are gonna result from those other two developments as well when you came to your conclusions? From what I understand, there's at least 105, I believe, townhouses at the Menon site. I presume that will create a terrific amount of traffic into our town on the MLK, the Ridgedale, and the Speedwell corridors. Has your analysis taken into account those other developments?
You're gonna get your answers.
Sorry, do you want me to answer now or?
No, answer it, let him have his time and then
Okay.
answer it.
That's one question. And second of all, Ms. Foster, you brought up a very interesting point before regarding if the developer was confronted with a height limitation on their proposed development, when they went to 7 floors to 6 floors. And you got a response that said, we're not proceeding. I mean, at that stage, if that's the response from the developer, can't you say, okay, then we're not proceeding? If you don't want to consider something less than what you're proposing, why don't you say, okay, take us to court? You as a council, it's not a Fifth Amendment takings case wherein you're keeping them from any reasonable use of their property. You're telling them, look, this is what we need as a community, this is what we need as a sustainable city. We want 3 stories. If you want to walk away from it, walk away from it. I think that should be your response to someone that says, we're not proceeding. And another issue that has been brought up from some folks that I've been speaking to tonight is, respectfully, who is advocating on behalf of the developer? I only understand you as Phil, you've been referred to as Phil, but are you a town employee? You seem to be meeting after meeting after meeting advocating on behalf of the developer. We want this, we need this, we've decided this. Are you a Morristown employee or are you an agent of the developer? I think you need to address those issues. Because it seems to me that at every turn in the road, wherever there's a conflict, you seem to be advocating on behalf of the developer. And once again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss these issues with you. And I urge you to deny this application for this development. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just make one comment, please, if you don't mind. On the comment about Phil, that's not a fair statement. I will tell you, Phil is the man in the middle, all right? And during this project, he has been working tirelessly along with this group to incorporate our concerns. And that comment you're making as to who represents the public, it's actually us right here. And it's us. We've been hearing your comments. We've gotten your emails. We've read your emails. We've been passing on that information to Phil. Phil's been the person in the middle. So it's, I just want to put it on record, that comment, that it may be your perception, but trust me, it's not reality.
Thank you, Councilman.
So if I may just address that, and I'm not sure if Phil should. Phil Abramson is the principal of topology, which is the town's planner. So there's no question as to who Phil Abramson and topology represent. They represent the town of Morristown. He does not advocate on behalf of the developer. Frankly, in my view, that comment is over the line. It's not a fair comment, and it's not true. The reality is this is part of a redevelopment process in an area that was designated, it was indicated, back 15 years or so ago. The town, not just this administration, the prior administration and prior governing bodies have believed that this area in town needs to be redeveloped. It hasn't. And so this administration has worked, and this administration through Phil as the point person, who is interacting with the various stakeholders, those stakeholders being the public, those stakeholders being the governing body, the administration, the property owner, the prospective developer, to get everybody's interests and views to help produce a project that the town of Morristown, will embrace. And that has been a long and challenging process, not only with respect to this project, but also many other projects. And that process from the administration end of things in large part has been led by Phil. So he is not advocating on behalf of the developer. He is advocating on behalf of the town of Morristown. And this plan is not the developer's plan, it's the town of Morristown's plan. But it would make no sense for the town of Morristown to say, we want X, if nobody's ever going to build X. The point of redevelopment is to produce a project that is good for the community and a project that will be built. And if you don't engage with all of the stakeholders, including the developer, then you'll have a wonderful project that no one will ever build. And so, Phil's role, which is challenging, and my own personal experience is that he does it extraordinarily well, is to be the person that interfaces and directs all that traffic ultimately in a way that helps this governing body and administration accomplish its policy objectives in a way that produces a project that's good for the town.
I just want to add something. Before I got on the council, we had a town planner that was employed by the town. And I think there's a huge benefit to have a consulting town planner that is engaging with other towns and working with other towns. I thought a lot about this because I actually thought, would it benefit to have someone just dedicated to our town? And I rethought it and I thought, no. It really helps to have that broader perspective with regional planning because we don't do enough regional planning. So I think that we're lucky to have someone of Phil's caliber work with the town, and I think that it's the fault of the county probably that we don't do enough regional planning because we used to have some groups like Morris Tomorrow and other groups. They don't exist anymore, but their focus was more regional stuff. So I think that Phil's very passionate, and it might sound like he's advocating, but I think that's because he's just so passionate about what he does. So I think that it's clear that there's a lot of split views on this project, but I think we have to look at the bigger picture and the broader picture. I go back to office space. We lost Schenck, Price, Smith and King, not, one of Riker's competitors, to a place that has first-class office space. And we lost, another great law firm in town. Because the space that they were occupying wasn't modern enough. I think that what Phil says is extremely knowledgeable and resourceful as far as planning, and, if he's saying that this is the best thing for the town, and, the project puts Morristown on the map for pedestrian walkways and improved promenades and bicycle safety, bicycle and pedestrian access, which we don't have now, I agree.
Do you want to answer about background growth?
So just to touch on background growth, again, our role is to do an independent review of the traffic study that was conducted by the applicant's traffic engineer, and they included in their traffic projections certain developments within the study area, and then to account for those developments outside the study area, a regional growth projection. We reviewed that, we felt comfortable that was done in a reasonable manner. Comparing that to what Morris County has in their circulation element, the volumes are in line with what you would see on Morris Street corridor, so we're comfortable that it was done reasonably.
But just to clarify, your traffic study did incorporate the development on Menon? It included that density, that extra density?
It's built into the regional growth projection for the outside, the study area, not specifically that development. So that's built into that, yeah. Correct.
Morristown.